across America. Live. This is Point of View. And now, Kerby Anderson.
Thank you for joining me. It is the Tuesday edition of Point of View. And over the next 2 hours, we're going to be talking about a wide range of topics and issues, from abortion to wokeness and much, much more. Religious liberty, a couple of things we will be talking about. But since we, of course, have this ongoing military engagement in Iran, I thought for just a minute I would make a few statements about that. One is one of the articles we've posted by Roger Kimball. "'Tis but a flesh wound," okay, with apologies to Monty Python, but nevertheless, the delusional argument from first Iran and then some of the legacy press about how poorly the war is going. And again, he says a day or two back, an inadvertently comical Baghdad Bob, that might remind some of you of back when we were in Desert Storm, took the airwaves to talk about the hollowness of the U.S. naval power and has guaranteed Iran's victory. Hard to even say that seriously. And then he begins to give you some examples from The Economist and the New York Times, even the Wall Street Journal, about various things that are sort of doom and gloom. And yet at the end does give you a very long list of the things that Donald Trump and, of course, Secretary Hegseth and others wanted to achieve. One was completely degrading Iranian missile capability launches, which they have, destroying Iran's defense industrial base, yes, eliminating their Navy and Air Force, including their anti-aircraft weaponry. Number 4, not allowing Iran to get closer to nuclear capability. Number 5, protecting at the highest level our Middle Eastern allies, including Israel, Saudi Arabia, Qatar, United Arab Emirates, Bahrain, Kuwait, and others. I'm going to come back to that in just a minute because that's been the biggest issue right now. But when the New York Times the other day was asking the question, who is winning the war, this quote from Roger Kimball I thought was very powerful. The Secretary of Defense, or you want to call him Secretary of War, Pete Hegseth, offered a clue. "We've decided to share the ocean with Iran. We've given them the bottom half," which is a way to illustrate again what's going on. But that 5th point is one that we will come back to probably more tomorrow, because if you look at this right now, Iran has been just indiscriminately launching missiles, and as a result, the IEA chief said the other day that this could precipitate an oil crisis that rivals the one of the 1970s. Those of us that are old enough remember that. If indeed they are able to successfully attack Qatar, about 25% of the world's natural gas comes from that, and that is not good news for people that might be living in Europe, as well as the issue of water that we oftentimes don't think about. If indeed you destroy some of the desalinization plants, Kuwait gets about 90% of their water from desalinization. Qatar gets about 99%. Even Saudi Arabia gets about 70%. After all, these are desert nations. They don't have rivers and lakes. And so there are some issues that could be of concern. One other one I'll mention, undersea cables, the cables that are tying the global internet together. Some of them run through the Persian Gulf. So there is certainly a destruction of the military capability of Iran, but their indiscriminate shooting of various allies or potential allies in the Middle East has certainly raised some very significant concerns. And tomorrow we will get into that in more detail, for no other reason that we will have Gary Bauer with us. Liberty will be with us as well, Joshua Barnes. There'll be a lot of things that we will cover in that regard. But today we're going to focus on some of those things closer to home, and I think that's appropriate. But if you've been listening, you know that this is the second day of our Truth Team Week, and once again, Collin Lambert's in studio.
It's great to be here in Truth Team Week, always an exciting time. Let me give you the phone number right off the bat, because this is what you need to get involved. 800-347-5151, 800-347-5151, pointofview.net. You can go right there. I want to even start with a couple of thank yous, and then we've got a great thing to kick us off today. Robert in Texas, thank you for your gift. Don and Evelyn in North Carolina. John, thank you. Terry in Ohio. Eric in New Hampshire. Case in Ohio. And Thomas in Georgia have all given recently, and we are grateful for that. And Kerby, to get us started this hour, we have a $1,500 dollar for dollar match, and it's on the board right now. So any gift you give right now up to $1,500 will be met dollar for dollar. All you need to do is call 800-347-5151, 800-347-5151. It also counts if you go to pointofview.net and fill out that little form. We'll count you there as well. Let's use this up. It's been given as a gift to encourage others to give. It's a great time to do so. 800-347-5151.
Sometimes people say, well, do you have a match on the table? And the answer is yes, right now we do.
Right now we do.
So that is the case. Let me just remind some of you that there are some tremendous benefits to actually joining with the Truth Team. For example, if you join at least $1 a day, $30 a month, $360 a year, you receive booklets. And in a few minutes, I'm going to hold up some of these booklets because we'll be talking with Chelsey about the issue of abortion. Here's one on chemical abortion by Liberty, on earlier one on abortion pill, and one that I've done on how to maybe argue for pro-life issues. And those are some benefits that we have been making available, but we've added something else, which is sort of intriguing here. Those of you watching online can see I'm not going to open up the umbrella in here, but I will show you that it's an umbrella that we're making available.
Yeah, it's like a full-size golf umbrella. It's got the Point of View logo on it, but it contracts down to about 22 inches. I've never seen a golf-size umbrella that goes down that small, but it's available to you with that gift of $30 a month or more. If you give a gift of $50 a month or more, again, if you're watching today, we've got these wonderful bookends for your bookshelf that's wood engraved with a quote from the Declaration. It also says Point of View. And then at the $100 level, a beautiful book called The Words That Built America. And Kerby, it has things like the Declaration of Independence, the Bill of Rights, and many other great features as well.
Again, we've made available that most recent booklet on the Declaration, but again, it has the Bill of Rights, like you said, has a lot of the famous speeches. Martin Luther King's I Have a Dream, Patrick Henry's Give Me Liberty, Give Me Death, of course, Abraham Lincoln's Gettysburg Address. It not only has the Constitution, but they've translated it, not that those words are that hard to understand, but in 1787 and 89, those were a little different, so they give you a translation of it so that you could read it to your kids. And then you even have some of the great classics like the Star-Spangled Banner, America the Beautiful, Pledge of Allegiance, things of that nature, the Mayflower Compact, on and on and on. These are things we want to put in your hands if you want to join with us, and we're encouraging people to do so.
Absolutely. Just so you know kind of the big picture, we are looking for $150,000 this week. This is not extra. This is not bonus dollars. This is to help keep Point of View on the air. We're listener supported. Right now we're at about $10,000, so we have about $140,000 to go, and it's a long week, so we need to hear from you. With that $1,500 dollar for dollar match right now, call 800-347-5151 or go to pointofview.net.
I mentioned Chelsey will be on with us in just a minute, but this is a good time to make that phone call so you don't miss out anything. Lathan Watts will be with us in the second hour, so we are going to be really talking about some very important issues. And so while we're encouraging you to call, certainly we also want you to be able to hear some of the content we'll be covering this week. But this is a perfect time to make that phone call, 800-347-5151. Of course, you can at any time go to the website at pointofview.net. We'll be right back.
This is Viewpoints with Kerby Anderson.
Yesterday, I talked about the rising amount of national debt because we have increased the deficit over the last 6 months by $1 trillion. Now, you might logically wonder if the government could find some ways to save some money by cutting spending. Let me illustrate how difficult that has been by taking us back to the last year when Elon Musk and the Department of Government Efficiency tried cutting spending. A few months ago, the New York Times did an analysis which I will use to make a point. Their analysis looked at the 40 biggest cuts on the DOGE list and found that only 12 appeared to be accurate. Part of the problem is many of the cuts weren't really cut by the government. 2 of the largest cuts were in the Defense Department, but both are still alive. And DOGE was not allowed to make cuts in entitlement programs, which account for 60% of the federal budget. Here are a few of the other errors. One was double counting. The analysis found that DOGE took credit for canceling the same Department of Energy grant twice. Another problem was timeline errors. Doge claimed credit for a contract that was terminated by the Biden administration, but some of the other Doge cuts did take place, but were later resurrected by court rulings. It turns out that the Doge cuts were merely a small nick in the overall budget of the federal government. But you would think from the reaction from the public that these were massive draconian cuts. Do you remember the marches in the streets? Do you remember the number of Tesla cars or car dealerships attacked by angry protesters? These small, insignificant cuts generated an enormous reaction, and that is why no politician wants to be cutting spending. I'm Kerby Anderson, and that's my point of view.
Go deeper on topics like you just heard by visiting pointofview.net. That's pointofview.net. Restoring America's godly heritage. Point of View.
And what we tell folks over at AFR is, of course, we want people to primarily support their local church and their local congregation. But we also encourage them to go above and beyond, and that means supporting ministries like and radio programs like Point of View. And so you just never know who you're going to impact, and I'm sure you guys field all kinds of testimonies of listeners that are impacted and have their lives transformed through listening to Point of View. And when the gospel's presented or you're teaching on a biblical subject, there's just a lot of transformation and life-altering information that's shared on Point of View. And it's just, to me, it's encouraging to be able to invest in work like that, to where you can impact people that maybe you've never met before and maybe you never will meet. But listeners out there in the radio world are being transformed. They're being encouraged, they're being challenged, and they're being educated on what it means to think biblically. And that's what radio programs like Point of View do.
Point of View. Restoring America's godly heritage.
Words from our good friend Walker Wildman at American Family Association, and also a talk show host on American Family Radio. Wish we could get him on more often because he brings so much to the table, but oftentimes he's broadcasting at the same time we are. But we work it out from time to time, and it's been great. We always love to go to Tuscaloosa and all sorts of other places, and go to, of course, where they're located in Mississippi, Tupelo. And every time we go to the South, whether it's our good friends in Alabama or Mississippi, wherever, we enjoy chatting with them, enjoy being with Walker Wildman, Tim Wildman, Wesley Wildman, and the whole family there as well. So again, encouraging you to support the local ministry, whatever it might be. Obviously, your church and Christian organizations, support the local radio station where you hear this as well. But I think it would also be something that he would encourage you to do to support Point of View. And one of the things that we have, Collin, is a match on the table right now.
We do. We have a $1,500 dollar-for-dollar match, $25 in so far, so $1,475 of that remain. Again, it is a dollar-for-dollar match, so every gift up to now $1,475 will be doubled dollar for dollar. And as you give your gift, understand that it is making a difference, just as Kerby was talking about, the impact that it's had across the nation. That's what you're going to see as you give your gift. It will change lives. It will change hearts. It has been doing it for 54 years. So I want to encourage you, if you haven't given yet this year, now is a great time. If you've given already, be praying for us that others will give. And if maybe you give a monthly gift, would you kindly consider upping your monthly gift? Say you're giving $20 a month or $30 a month. Could you increase that by $10 a month right now? Whatever you can do, it's going to be matched dollar for dollar. 800-347-5151 or pointofview.net.
I might also mention, if one of you, as you are giving, would like to put another match on the table, that's a possibility too. That's happened from time to time. But just a few minutes ago, I held up a few of the booklets. I'll hold them up again. One written by Liberty McCarter on the abortion pill, and the most recent one, A Biblical View on Chemical Abortion, because that includes all the legal issues, which also relate to one of the articles I've posted. This comes from Senator Josh Hawley's office, in which not only do they want to ban the kind of distribution of chemical abortive drugs, but he also has sent letters to two of these chemical abortion drug manufacturers into an investigation about their practices. Could couldn't think of a better person to address this issue than our good friend Chelsey, who is Senior Counsel for Alliance Defending Freedom for the Center for Public Policy. You know her as an individual that has been in the past the host of the Next Generation Roundtable. Also, of course, she has been a leading voice in speaking to issues like the Women and Child Protection Act and the Texas Heartbeat Act. And so, Chelsey, welcome back to Point of View.
Always good to be here with you, Kerby.
What about what Josh Hawley is doing? I saw they had a press conference there the other day, and all sorts of pro-life people that I know were standing next to him. And it does seem to me that even this issue is, I think, an illustration of bringing all the pro-life community together to say that what this is doing, not only killing babies, but it's harming women, isn't it?
It is. You're so right. He is leading the forefront at the federal level right now, and I'm so grateful for his leadership. I think it's an issue that Americans are growing and understanding that not just are children killed when women take abortion drugs, but the women themselves, according to the FDA's own evidence, is astounding, that they're ending up in hospitals, they're ending up in emergency rooms. Their boyfriends, partners, and parents are forcing young girls to get the abortion drugs when they're sold online, not of their own volition. And there's an incredible crisis on our hands in America.
One of the things he's also doing is creating a hotline for victims. And of course, before you were working with ADF, you were also working with an organization that was using these kinds of hotlines to talk to abortion-minded women that were considering abortion. In this case, we're talking about women who have been exploited by abortion, and this hotline provides maybe really almost a new research area, because there are probably many women that we do not know about that have suffered from some of these, haven't they?
Yes, that's so true, because the FDA doesn't require doctors to report when women are harmed from these drugs. And so the only way to really know is by backtracking. Maybe hospital coding is a way to know. Some studies have taken it. But really what we hope happens, and I'm so grateful Senator Hawley is leading on this, is that women have an option to get help. And so giving the hotline, giving us more information about what these drugs are doing, and also making sure women get access to the care that they need. They need to see doctors. They need to go to the emergency rooms when they suffer these complications, like hemorrhage, or some of them lose fallopian tubes or end up in surgery. And the more that women, I think, know or understand how dangerous these drugs really are, the less likely they are to take them, and hopefully instead choose life and choose to keep and raise their children.
I do hope some of them also report the fact that they were forced into an abortion by an abuser. But, Collin, let me come to you for just a minute, because I was just thinking, we've said this before, if these drugs were not associated with abortion, and we had these kind of negative effects, there would be a national outcry over what is taking place. But because it's abortion, there is a tendency for many individuals to turn a blind eye to what's taking place.
Yeah, absolutely. And you're going to find that starts with your mainstream media. They will not be talking about it. And most of the Democrats are not going to talk about it in the negative sense. They're just going to be saying women are not having the health care treatments that they need. And anybody who tries to equate health care with abortion, it's just wrong-minded, really, and certainly unbiblical. But it is one of those topics, Kerby, that you all cover each and every day that's just so important. And that's why we're asking this week, during Truth Team Week, that people partner with us as members of this team. We want you to be partners in this ministry. It is listener-supported. There are no government grants coming this direction. There are no endowments. It is kept on the air because of your kind gifts a couple of times a year. Here's the number, 800-347-5151, 800-347-5151. And right now, someone has made a generous gift, $1,500, and they will match your gift dollar for dollar up to now $1,475 of that remaining. What part can you play? Let's get that doubled right now, 800-347-5151. It also counts online at pointofview.net.
Chelsey, what would you say to our listeners? They've, of course, had a chance to hear you many times on Point of View, but why should individuals support Point of View?
Point of View is my number one news source. Every single day, every single week, you can count on Point of View to not just tell you what's going on in the world, tell you how it applies to you, how we can think of it through a biblical world lens, and then also what's the most relevant headlines to us, because we all know that mainstream media might vary a lot of headlines, or a lot of news doesn't make it out into the general public, and Point of View is always going to pull those stories forward and tell us, I think, what's most important.
So again, this is one of the opportunities that we give to you right now. As we go to a break, you can give us a call at 800-347-5151. Of course, a match on the table. When we come back, I do want to get some comments from Chelsey about, well, given the fact that more and more abortions are coming through chemical abortion, what can we do? Also, thought I'd get her comments, since she is with Alliance Defending Freedom. And next hour, we're going to have Lathan Watts, who's also with Alliance Defending Freedom, in studio. This recent Supreme Court decision, hold this one up today. Yesterday, we talked about the one that was in the New York Times. This one is in the Wall Street Journal. Supreme Court and the street preacher. It illustrates, again, not only are groups like First Liberty Institute winning 11 of their cases, and the last two unanimously, they're getting rather favorable coverage from the mainstream press as well. But first of all, Collin, we need to encourage people to make that phone call. We still have a match on the table, and this would be a good time to make that call. 800-347-5151. Of course, the website is pointofview.net. You can make your gift there, or your pledge, and you can find out more about some of the gifts we would love to send to you. Let's take a break. 1-800-347-5151.
America was founded on a bedrock of biblical values. The best way to help America reclaim that godly heritage is to equip individuals to adopt a biblical worldview in their own life. You can help accomplish that by joining Point of View's Truth Team, and there is no better time to join than this week. The Truth Team is Point of View's core team of supporters, the people who make it possible for listeners like you around the nation to receive a biblical perspective on contemporary issues every day. To continue our mission effectively, Point of View needs to raise $150,000 by this Friday. Help us reach our goal, and most importantly, help Americans adopt a biblical worldview. Join the Truth Team today by visiting pointofview.net or call 1-800-347-5151. That's pointofview.net. And toll-free 1-800-347-5151. Point of View will continue after this. You are listening to Point of View. The opinions expressed on Point of View do not necessarily reflect the views of the management or staff of this station. And now, here again is Kerby Anderson.
Back once again, this is the second day of our Truth Team week. We encourage you to join with us on the Truth Team. We do have a match on the table. We've made a little bit of progress, but we certainly need to hear from you. So please give us a call at 800-347-5151. Of course, the website is pointofview.net. Collin, how are we doing?
We're doing all right. We're making some progress. $1,500 dollar-for-dollar match so far, $835 in. $665 in. I'm backwards. Forgive me. $835 in, $665 to go on the 1,500. We just got gifts from Carol and Dan in Illinois, and Donna with a gift and another $30 recurring gift. So every single gift counts right now. So important to hear from you at this moment, because we've got this dollar-for-dollar match on the board. Still have $665 to go. So every gift up to $665 right now can be met dollar for dollar at 800-347-5151 or at pointofview.net.
So we're making some progress, but we certainly need to hear from you. And if you've been waiting, sometimes I have people say, well, I'm just going to wait so that I can have a match. Well, the match is on the table, so why are you waiting? There's a great opportunity right now. Chelsey, let me come back to you. I do want to get into a couple of these religious liberty cases, because you, of course, work with Alliance Defending Freedom. Freedom, and in the past you worked with First Liberty Institute. But since we were talking about this issue of chemical abortion, as I understand it, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, more abortions are happening because of these abortion pills, and it does, I think, illustrate the need for us to find ways to essentially change the culture. In the past, it was possible to meet a woman who is abortion-minded before she goes into an abortion clinic. Now they can order them online, and they can get them from the drugstore. So in some respects, it brings us back to the fact that this is still a war of ideas and a war for the hearts and minds of young women, in many cases, who are convinced that the only answer to their so-called problem pregnancy is an abortion.
Wow, just really powerfully said, Kerby. I think you're right. I think this is first and foremost a heart issue and a spiritual issue, as so many things in our culture are, right? We can talk about politics and we can talk about culture, but at the end of the day, what this is about is a spiritual battle between good and evil, life and death, and God's creation and the enemy's plan to snuff that creation out. And we know this because when I worked at Human Coalition, we were serving tens of thousands of pregnant women seeking abortion a year, and our nurses would always say they're just wearing the spiritual battle. And it's, they've got a lot of challenges, a lot of stressful things in their lives, and they almost can't see past those challenges to a hopeful future, or a future where they can parent well. And so for us as a community and as a body of believers to support women in our neighborhoods, in our churches, in our pews, this is the abortion rate inside the church is the same as the abortion rate outside the church. And so for us to say we're going to start in our own neighborhoods, being the community we need to be to show these women love, ultimately it is a gospel message.
Well, and again, one of the things that you just illustrated is that we need to start in our communities. First of all, a lot of what you do, as I understand from ADF, is still working with the local states, in this particular case where you're located, the state of Texas, and we broadcast in, I think, about almost 40 states. And it does seem to me that sometimes people say, well, this is such a big issue, but once you had the Dobbs decision coming down and overturning Roe versus Wade, in some respects it moved it back to the states, and that might be good for people that are pro-life, don't you think?
Well, that is right, because every state had these trigger laws, or their old laws even, be able to come back into effect. And so there are many, many states protecting children. I think the real challenge, besides, the cultural piece of this and our value of humanity as, I think, a nation, which we need to do a better job of, is abortion drugs online. So people can go online right now, and drugs are delivered within about 48 hours, sometimes faster. We've heard women getting drugs off eBay, for crying out loud. And so it's pervasive, it's everywhere. And unfortunately, as many states as are protecting life, we've got illicit actors out of those states pumping drugs into those states as fast as possible. And so we do need stronger protections. I've done a lot of work on how to go about that, how we can empower women against abusers or people trying to force them to take these drugs. And it really starts by holding these drug manufacturers accountable.
One of the things, Collin, that we've talked about before is people listening to Point of View have decided to contact their city council, to contact their legislature, even to start pregnancy resource centers. And in some respects, when people are supporting Point of View, they're actually helping other people, including themselves, make a difference.
Yeah. And Julie here from Michigan, one of our donors, has made this comment about her participation and engagement with Point of View. She says, your program enables me to have conversations with other people, both Christian and non-Christian, on topics that I might not be able to discuss otherwise. And sometimes I'm even able to educate others on topics that I've heard you discuss on your program. So here's Julie from Michigan, who's been listening just about 4 years now, and she says, I'm engaged because you help me be engaged, and I can talk to the Christian, I can talk to the non-Christian because I have the top line data, but I also am learning what the Bible says about these critical issues as well. As you give your gift, you're enabling people like Julie to have conversations like we were just talking about. And right now we have a dollar for dollar match on the board, $665 remaining, 800-347-5151. Kerby, you said we're on almost 40 states. How about one call right now from every state? That would get us a good way down the line. Where are you listening from? Texas, South Carolina, Ohio, New Hampshire, Illinois, South Carolina, wherever it is, pick up that phone and call 800-347-5151 or pointofview.net.
Just for a few minutes, I thought Chelsey might just talk about this issue of religious liberty. Of course, you've been involved in the past with First Liberty Institute. Now you're with Alliance Defending Freedom. You have some cases before the Supreme Court. But here I've got an article that appeared in the Wall Street Journal. A couple of days ago, you had one in the New York Times, and they're all very complimentary of some of these decisions. This latest decision came down and was written by Justice Elena Kagan, who is, to put it mildly, left of center on those issues. But nevertheless, I think it illustrates that there are some really positive things happening because of these Supreme Court decisions, and we may now be having more freedom and religious liberty than we've had in decades, don't you think?
I certainly hope so. You know, our First Amendment rights are really well established and our strongest rights protected in the law, but they're also the rights that are attacked the most. And I think that's one of the reasons for needing to be so engaged on this issue is our rights of conscience, our ability to more than just worship, but like act out, speak about, and work through our faith in public forums. That is fundamental to our rights as Americans and as humans, really. And so we are encouraged by the Supreme Court and some of their decisions that they've been rendering. And we're really hopeful that those rights will continue to remain strong, but they are certainly tested.
Well, one of the things I thought I might mention, because Collin can appreciate this, if you go to the adflegal.org, the first thing that pops up is Religious Freedom Win for Christian College. Moody Bible Institute students are now free to participate in student teaching program because of a favorable settlement with the Chicago Board of Education. So, Collin, here's a good example. You've lived in Chicago in the past and recognize that in some cases, if you were at Moody Bible Institute, you were sort of pushed off to the side. And yet this is a particular win at the Board of Education level, but it doesn't matter that whether it happens at the Supreme Court or at your local community, there are some major wins taking place.
It all matters, and the students of the Moody Bible Institute dedicate and give thousands and thousands of hours to the city of Chicago every year, and the fact that they weren't allowed to get into the public schools to do kind of their student teaching because of their beliefs was just crazy, and yet it did turn out in a good way, and we're thrilled about that. Just so excited about that. But these are the kinds of stories you hear on Point of View that you're just not going to hear pretty much anywhere else. It's Truth Team Week. Are you a member of the Truth Team? If you're not, I want to encourage you to be a part. We just had a gift of $50 a month from Diane in Ohio. Diane, thank you. You took care of $600 of that $665. So, Kerby, we have $65 remaining in this dollar-for-dollar match. Maybe someone right now would take that $65 and get it off the board. We would appreciate it. 800-347-5151 or pointofview.net.
Well, Chelsey, thank you for being with us today. Look forward to hearing you again in some of the upcoming programs, and thanks for being with us today here on Point of View.
Always good to be here, Kerby. Thank you.
Again, we are going to a break. Perfect time to make that phone call, 800-347-5151. Just a little bit left, and once we do that, I don't know, maybe we can find another possible way in which we can encourage people to support this ministry, because we certainly do need your financial support. Again, the website is pointofview.net. You can find some information about both of our guests today, as well as, of course, all the information about Truth Team. And, of course, if you would like to make that phone call, we have people literally sitting by the phone waiting for it to ring. 800-347-5151. Let's take a break. We'll be right back.
Restoring America's godly heritage. Point of View.
Point of View fills what would otherwise be a void of information, news, and analysis that Americans need, but we so rarely get from any other source. So it would create a tremendous void, I believe. Point of View is such a vital work for getting the truth out, for exposing atrocities. I know you all do a tremendous amount of research, and it's vital that you all are able to continue your work and stay on the air and continue to grow as you have been. So I would greatly encourage anyone that knows about Point of View to step forward and help to keep your work on the air.
Point of View, restoring America's godly heritage.
Some encouragement from Elizabeth Reidenauer. She is the head of the National Council on Biblical Curriculum in Public Schools, something we've talked about before, and probably illustrates one of the things that maybe we could see Chelsey's hesitancy about Collin a minute ago, because in some respects we're seeing so many cases coming in our direction in terms of religious liberty. But the one place, and we'll be talking about this next hour with Lathan Watts, because we've posted his piece on school districts are keeping parents in the dark over social transitioning, is that even though in the public schools you can actually teach about the Bible and things like that, still there is this tendency to not necessarily have a real dedication to parental rights. And we'll be talking about Lathan about that. But whether you look at what they're dealing with at ADF or First Liberty Institute, they had one individual who was, I believe, as a fifth grader, was supposed to read a sort of a gay pride book to kindergartners that they've been dealing with. They had another individual who was a first grade teacher who's just simply said, I can't in good conscience read this to my first grade class, so I'll let someone else, and then they put him in the computer lab. So there's still an issue to be raised about this issue of parental rights, but when we see so many of these successes, we still have to recognize there's work to do. And it kind of relates back to Point of View. We've been talking about this issue of parental rights for almost, 54 years just about. That was one of the very first issues Marlon Maddox used to address years and years ago, and it's still one of those issues that we need to be involved with, and that's why we're encouraging people to be involved with us.
This is one of the few places that you can find stories like that, and few places that you can find the headlines of the day that are truly substantial to the Christian's life, and they're going to be there every day, along with, as Kerby said, supporting resources and materials at pointofview.net. I want to celebrate the fact we met that $1,500 dollar-for-dollar match. So first of all, thank you to the person who gave the match that encouraged others to give, and then to each and every one of you who gave to help put us over that $1,500. The last couple of gifts that just came in, Beatrice with a $500 gift and Sheila from Georgia with a $50 gift. Both of you helped put us over that, and we are so grateful. Let me say, we don't have a long line of dollars set aside for these types of matches. If you feel led and you are able to give a larger gift, maybe you could look at a stock gift or a qualified charitable distribution from an IRA. I don't know what you have available, but if you are a person who God has blessed, maybe your business is going really well, you could use one of these gifts as a match to encourage others to give. And let me tell you, as you've just seen, it really does encourage them to give. Could you give $2,500 or $5,000 or $10,000? I know not everybody's able to do that, but somewhere across about 40 states, Kerby, I'm thinking maybe someone right now has a gift that size that they could commit, which would really help us stay on track on day 2 of Truth Team Week.
You were talking about that idea of a qualified distribution, and I've done that now once or twice, because that is one of those cases where somebody might say, well, I have money right now, but I could give you as a pledge, and you don't have to have the money in hand right now as you call in. You can say, well, I'll have to work through the particular institution, in many cases it's a financial planner, to make that available, and they will send that to Point of View. And the benefit is that you get the entire benefit of that gift, and you don't have to pay capital gains. So there's some real benefits to pursuing that. And if you find yourself saying, well, this is new territory, you could give us a call, and we would be glad to help you answer some of those questions.
And again, as Kerby just said, I think it's a good reminder. My wife and I have always given gifts to ministries that we support, like Point of View. We've always given over a 12-month time period.
Yes.
Why? 2 reasons. Number one, I don't have all the money up front. And number two, because it has enabled us to give larger gifts because we spread it out.
Yeah.
So if you gave $10, that's a great gift. But if you gave $10 a month, that's all of a sudden $120. Or that $30 gift becomes $1 a day, like Kerby talks about. So maybe $1,000 gift, that's $84 a month. Or maybe a $500 gift, that's $42 a month. Figure it out what works for you. You don't have to have all the money today, but we do need to hear from you. Get on the team. That's the most important part. 800-347-5151, 800-347-5151, or pointofview.net.
One of the things that we oftentimes encourage people to do is not only to give to this ministry, but to contact their members of Congress. As you well know, there's been a real battle right now about the Save America Act. And one of the articles I've posted for you is from Colonel Allen West. It's sometimes interesting to have somebody who's an African American who, as he's pointed out before, was born into a separatist or segregated hospital, but nevertheless takes on the individuals referring to the Save America Act as Jim Crow 2.0. And he has a little bit of fun at their expense by saying, you know, the other day I was in South Carolina and I had to fly on American Airlines, but they must be Jim Crow 2.0 because they made me present a picture ID to board the flight. Matter of fact, before I even got on, I had to show a picture ID at the TSA, and so TSA must be racist. And he goes through all this and then reminds us that there are some real needs to have a standard voter ID. He reminds us that Kamala Harris won 12 states where there was no voter ID. And what about state and local issues? And then just the whole title of this is, what type of people are against the Save America Act? And of course, he really takes on some of those as well. So a 4-page piece, which if after you've already contacted you two senators and they've written back saying, no, this is Jim Crow 2.0, you might want to read the piece that we've posted by Allen West. Colonel Allen West takes on some of these silly arguments, these fallacious arguments, these erroneous arguments in a way that might make you smile but also shake your head. And that's the kind of stuff we do here at Point of View as well. You'll hear that tomorrow with Gary Bauer for sure. He's always good with those one-liners and all of that. But as we go to a break, Collin, many people have been waiting to actually be able to give to us. And during this very extended break is the best time to make that phone call.
Yeah, it is a good time. And let me tell you what kind of impact your gift makes. Mary in California has been listening 30 years, but she says this: I think it's helped me be bolder in expressing my Christian worldview and values when others are not thinking the same opinions that I am. I'm not afraid of standing up for what's right, and I'm not afraid of being a Christ follower that Jesus calls me to be. So Mary has been emboldened and encouraged by the work of Point of View. Your gifts help make that possible, maybe for yourself, your family, but certainly for people like Mary from California. Can we hear from you right now? Again, no government support here, no endowments. Your gifts are what keep Point of View going. If you want to see Point of View continue, we need to reach our goal this week, and you can help us do it starting right now. 800-347-5151 or pointofview.net.
Going to take a break, and when we come back, in studio with us, Lathan Watts, Vice President for Public Affairs for Alliance Defending Freedom, posted a very good piece he wrote on school districts keeping parents in the dark over social transitioning. Also one about woke goes up in smoke. So we've got a couple things to talk about, but we right now encourage your phone call. 1-800-347-5151. Of course, the website is pointofview.net. Let's take a break. We'll come back with Lathan Watts right after this.
America's founding fathers knew that freedom requires morality. It was John Adams who said, "Our Constitution was made only for a moral and religious people. It is wholly inadequate to the government of any other." If we want to preserve the freedom in America, we must equip Americans with a biblical worldview once more. For over 50 years, Point of View has done just that by applying a biblical perspective to every issue of the day, thanks to our ministry partners, people like you. And that is why I'm asking you to join the Truth Team. And the time to join is right now, because Point of View needs to raise $150,000 this week. Help America reclaim its moral compass. Join the Truth Team today by visiting pointofview.net or call 1-800-347-5151. That's pointofview.net and 1-800-347-5151. Point of View will continue after this. Across America, live, this is Point of View. And now, Kerby Anderson.
Second hour today, we're going to get to, in just a few minutes, our good friend Lathan Watts, who again is Vice President of Public Affairs for Alliance Defending Freedom. I thought real quickly, since I just a minute ago mentioned what we have as our action item and have encouraged you in the past to certainly click on that button that says Take Action. But if you click on the button next to it, it's called Viewpoints, and that's, of course, my Viewpoints commentary. My one today is about cutting spending, and this is of concern because, again, a lot of people said there are two ways to balance your budget. One is to increase your income. The other is to decrease your expenses. And the attempt to try to decrease our expenses really hit significant headwinds, hit a wall, probably is a better metaphor. Elon Musk and the Department of Government Efficiency tried cutting spending, and as we now can look back, say they did very little. Not for a lack of trying, but because of a number of things. First of all, two of the most significant cuts that they made in the DOGE list were those having to do with the Defense Department. But at the moment, they're still both alive, and I don't see them being cut anytime soon. We also, of course, recognize that DOGE was not going to be able to cut any kind of entitlement program. That's 60% of the budget. You had a couple of other things. For example, there was DOGE taking credit for canceling the Department of Energy grant, but then shows up later on, so it looks like they may have double counted. And then you've had other particular things that were indeed cut, but later resurrected by court rulings. I say all that to just help you understand that if you look at the entire federal budget, the DOGE cuts were at best a very small nick in the overall budget of the federal government. But you remember the reaction? I mean, there were people in the streets acting as if these were massive, draconian cuts. People marching in the streets, people actually beating up Tesla cars, car dealerships, and all of the rest, attacked by angry protesters. And I think you can see why the argument that we have made many times, as important as it would be to cut programs and engage in austerity, just isn't going to happen. And this is, I think, a sad legacy in an attempt to try to cut the budget and how very little of it actually took place. Again, you may have seen some of that if you happen to read the right article in the New York Times, but otherwise, this summary that I give to you is available today on the website, pointofview.net. And Collin, that's just another benefit. Every day we post a commentary, mine Monday through Friday, Penna's on Saturday, which come to your inbox. This is another way, if you support this ministry, you'll get news information you might get nowhere else.
From an outside guy, I want to say this. If just Kerby Anderson wrote commentaries and put material together, this would be an invaluable program to you. But add to that all of the incredible guests, all of the incredible resources, incredible information that they put on the website every day that Kerby brings to you here on the air. This is Truth Week, my friends, and this is an important week. It just happens a couple of times a year. I want to encourage you. I did this yesterday. I want to encourage it again. Take a moment today or this week. Read 2 Corinthians 8, 1 through 5. 2 Corinthians 8, 1 through 5 talks about the Macedonians giving out of an abundance of joy. Even those who were in extreme poverty gave according to their means or beyond their means. So what does that mean? It means these people who were suffering, whatever the affliction was, They were suffering, and yet many of them were giving beyond what they probably thought they could give or should give. You have the opportunity to do that right now at 800-347-5151. There are no endowments. There's no government Doge money coming this direction. It is all funded through you. So if you love Kerby and what he does each day, if you love the guests that come on here, if you utilize those resources to help transform your communication with others, family members, friends, 800-347-5151. And right now, Kerby, we've got another, and this is the last. I'm just lining it up right now. We have no more. $1,500 dollar-for-dollar match just got put on the board, and every gift right now will be doubled up to that $1,500 starting right now. Again, you can call 800-347-5151, or you can go online at pointofview.net, and that will be doubled as well. Up to $1,500. Now's your chance. Call or click right now.
Well, you reached into your bag and pulled out a second one, but now I think the bag's empty.
It is empty.
If you're waiting, this is the time to get involved. And let me just say something that maybe is pretty obvious, and that is there's just a great deal of uncertainty right now. I mean, we've been talking about a war that is taking place in Iran. Maybe it's winding down, but, you know, we see gas prices going up. We're recognizing the issue of natural gas, as well as I even mentioned, the need for water in places like the Middle East, and the whole issue of fertilizer. Will we have enough to actually grow crops? That means there's a lot of uncertainty, and I recognize some people are in a situation right now that they might not be able to give. And so that's why I hope that some of you that are in a position where you can give, maybe you can help cover some of those who would love to give, but they are just on a limited income. Maybe they are seeing a downturn in their own ability to raise funds on their own. And certainly that's what we're facing as we try to raise funds to continue this program.
And if you're listening today and you literally can't give anything, not $10, not $5, that's okay. Would you take a moment and just pray for the ministry of Point of View, that God would open the storehouses of heaven and provide those dollars that are needed? These are not extra dollars, by the way. We're not buying any golden microphones or anything else. This is just to keep the business going day in and day out and continuing to get you the great information and guests that you expect, and this incredible host, Kerby Anderson, to continue to bring you insights each and every day. 800-347-5151, 800-347-5151, or pointofview.net. $1,500 dollar-for-dollar match on the board right now.
And I might just mention, like you said, if you cannot support this ministry, a lot of what we provide is free. We have 6 articles today. You could download every one of those. My commentary, of course, is free to you. The Take Action item, the video that we've posted, and all sorts of other resources. But for those of you that can give, and I hope that many of you are in a position where, at the very least, you could join at kind of the base level, $1 a day, $30 a month, $360 a year. You'll receive the booklet. You'll receive all sorts of other resources, including the Outlook magazine, and, of course, the umbrella that we've been talking about. So I want to recognize that everyone can participate. If you can't participate financially, certainly I would encourage you to participate by getting some of these articles and passing them on to others. And many of the people that have been listening to Point of View really have benefited.
I just wanted to mention, very short, sweet comment from John, 10 years he's been listening. He said, it prepares me to provide biblical views on contemporary issues with my young adult children. So the gift is that as you give your gift, you're enabling people like John to have better, more learned conversations and biblically supported conversations with his own kids. I love that. That's a win for everybody.
Well, again, we're going to take a break, and then when we come back, we're going to be talking with our good friend Lathan Watts in studio, Vice President of Public Affairs for Alliance Defending Freedom. But we have another match on the table. Didn't see that one coming. 1-800-347-5151, 1-800-347-5151. Of course, the website is pointofview.net. We'll be right back.
This is Viewpoints with Kerby Anderson.
Yesterday, I talked about the rising amount of national debt because we have increased the deficit over the last 6 months by $1 trillion. Now, you might logically wonder if the government could find some ways to save some money by cutting spending. Let me illustrate how difficult that has been by taking us back to the last year when Elon Musk and the Department of Government Efficiency tried cutting spending. A few months ago, the New York Times did an analysis which I will use to make a point. Their analysis looked at the 40 biggest cuts on the DOGE list and found that only 12 appeared to be accurate. Part of the problem is many of the cuts weren't really cut by the government. 2 of the largest cuts were in the Defense Department, but both are still alive. And DOGE was not allowed to make cuts in entitlement programs, which account for 60% of the federal budget. Here are a few of the other errors. One was double counting. The analysis found that DOGE took credit for canceling the same Department of Energy grant twice. Another problem was timeline errors. DOGE claimed credit for a contract that was terminated by the Biden administration, but some of the other DOGE cuts did take place but were later resurrected by court rulings. It turns out that the DOGE cuts were merely a small nick in the overall budget of the federal government. But you would think from the reaction from the public that these were massive draconian cuts. Do you remember the marches in the streets? Do you remember the number of Tesla cars or car dealerships attacked by angry protesters? These small, insignificant cuts generated an enormous reaction, and that is why no politician wants to be cutting spending. I'm Kerby Anderson, and that's my point of view.
Go deeper on topics like you just heard by visiting pointofview.net. That's pointofview.net. Restoring America's Godly Heritage. Point of View.
I was a nurse at Christ Hospital on the southwest side of Chicago and found out that it was involved not just in late-term abortions, but that the method of abortion that the hospital used, called induced labor abortion, sometimes resulted in babies being aborted alive. And if they were aborted alive, they were allowed to die in our soiled utility room without any medical intervention. And I held one of those survivors. He'd been aborted because he had Down syndrome, 21 and a half weeks old, and held him for 45 minutes until he passed away. And that was a life-changing event, and eventually compelled me to go public when Christ Hospital wouldn't stop. And Point of View was just so helpful in broadcasting this travesty, and I'll just never be able to thank you enough for getting the word out on what's going, the worst of the worst that's going on.
Point of View, restoring America's godly heritage.
Getting the information out that led to legislation and a change in policy. Again, that's Jill Stanek, and an incredible story, which you can read more about on the website. And we are privileged to have in studio with us Lathan Watts. But before we do so, Collin Lambert, what about this match that you just put on the table?
Yeah, $1,500 dollar-for-dollar match, just $25 in so far, so $1,475 to go. But every gift right now doubled up to that $1,475 at 800-347-5151. 800-347-5151. Also counts if you go to pointofview.net. Great opportunity to be a part of this ministry. You just heard some of the impact of this program, helping people in the process of understanding what's going on in culture, what the Bible says about it, and most importantly, maybe how we can act on those things that we're learning. So grateful for that. 800-347-5151.
In studio with me, Lathan Watts is Vice President for Public Affairs at Alliance Defending Freedom. The bio we have here says ADF is dedicated to defending religious freedom, freedom of speech, sanctity of life, marriage, and parental rights. And I thought we'd talk about that. This article I've posted, Lathan, we've talked about before, and that is where one of your colleagues, Matt Sharp, was talking about this whole idea of the fact that these school districts aren't even telling the parents if the kids, their children, are wanting to go through social transitioning. And it just illustrates, again, just a minute ago, we were talking about some of the real successes, so I do want to talk about, but I think one of the great challenges right now seems to be in this area of parental rights. Somehow, certain government entities think they have greater rights than the parents do.
Unfortunately, yes. I mean, we have we have some successes, and that's always great to talk about to encourage people. We have a lot of work to do.
Yes.
There are currently, I think, over 1,000 school districts in America that have a policy like this, whether
Amazing.
it's official and in writing or unofficial and done through teacher training, where they conceal the fact from the parents that their child is, going through issues with gender and asking to be called a different name or different pronouns at school. Some of them, even refer to in the instructions. Some of them, that they give to teachers is like even during parent-teacher conferences, use the name that the parents call them when the parents are in the room. When they're not here, when the kid's at school, then you go and switch back to the new name or the new pronouns or whatever. And of course, it's a fundamental difference on whose child is that. And it's one that, absolutely crucial to, not just that individual child and their mental health, because who knows that child better than the parents? Who cares about that child more than the parents? But this is like a contagion. Like I said, there's 1,000+ school districts, and that's districts. Now, I don't know how many schools that totals up to when you think about how many schools are in some school districts. We have a case at the cert stage at the Supreme Court right now on this very issue. So we're waiting to hear if the court's going to take it. It's been conferenced a couple of times. It's been relisted a couple of times. So we're waiting on the court to say, yes, they're going to take it. No, they're not. Or if they might grant, vacate, remand back to the lower court, send it back. We'll see. On this very issue of the school district doing this without the parents knowing it, the parents found out, told them to stop it, and they kept doing it.
Right.
So it's, it is, parental rights are what we refer to as fundamental or pre-political. Yeah. So like they existed before there was a constitution, before there was a government. This is written in the laws of nature and nature's God. So hopefully the court takes that case and settles this issue nationwide to say, yes, of course, the parents have the right to control the upbringing, the health and well-being of their kids, the education of their kids, and schools. You can't do this. I'm sure it will be a far more eloquent opinion if it comes out than the way I just put it, but that's essentially what we're asking the court to say. No, you can't do that.
Yes. Well, let's see if we can just real quickly, because if you go to ADF Legal, 16 Supreme Court victories, an 80% plus a win rate, 32 years of defending rights, and you've got a couple of cases before the Supreme Court, one of which has to do with pregnancy resource centers, of all things.
Yes, that's First Choice Women's Health versus Platkin out of New Jersey. The Attorney General there is very much pro-abortion and does not like this pro-life pregnancy resource center. And he's basically been using the legal process in his position to harass them. Yes. He issued a consumer fraud alert to the entire state, which we discovered he consulted with Planned Parenthood on the language of that consumer fraud alert because First Choice offers abortion pill reversal services at their clinic. He subpoenaed over 10 years worth of documents, including their donor files and the names, all the information about their donors, because what could possibly go wrong if you have to disclose who's donating money to you. So the issue there is we started that case the case started obviously there in New Jersey in state court. We filed federal court First Amendment grounds, and the AG is basically trying to argue that you can't do that yet. You have to exhaust all of these remedies first, and you might not ever be able to get into federal court on this. But the more important issue, besides the technical procedural victory that I think we're going to get,
I think you will,
is that it gives pregnancy resources centers like First Choice a way of fighting back.
Yes.
Because the AG of New Jersey is not the only person doing this. There are multiple state AGs who have tried similar versions of this, and this will give those clients a way of fighting back.
Sure. And the whole time you've been speaking, I look over and Collin is shaking his head because we're talking about parental rights and then we're talking about abortion, pro-life clinics. And it just is sometimes if you aren't working in this field, you just go, you got to be making this stuff up. But unfortunately, these are the kinds of things we cover on Point of View.
Well, also shaking my head because of that reason, Kerby. Here you have one of the lead voices at ADF who is trying and working on and posting these cases on one side, on one story, and on the other side you have Point of View as well, who's been talking about parental rights since the earliest days of the program. I mean, one of the first programs probably in the country to spend time talking about parents' rights. So as you give your gift, you know that Point of View is going to be right there at the cutting edge, knowing what's happening around the country, what things are being challenged, how your religious liberties are being infringed upon, and all of those things that you look for from Point of View. It's happening, and your gift enables us to continue to do that. We've got a $1,500 dollar-for-dollar match on the board. Got another $75 from Lynn in California. Lynn, thank you. So $1,400 dollar-for-dollar match still on the board. Take advantage of it right now. 800-347-5151. 800-347-5151 or pointofview.net.
Rather slow response, but I know that. You bring Lathan Watts in or anybody else, and they want to hear what he has to say. So as we go to a break, that will be a perfect time for you to call, because when we come back, I do want to also point to an article called Woke Goes Up in Smoke. And in some respects, some of these woke ideas that we've talked about with ADF are actually beginning to wind down, but at least Hollywood and the Academy don't seem to have gotten the memo. So we're going to talk about that and some of the cases that they have been dealing with, not only in the courtroom, but recognizing that you can deal with some of these in the boardroom or with some of the shareholders. So it's a fascinating strategy that ADF has developed. Again, if you think you've read about that in a newspaper, it's probably been pretty rare, but you have heard about us talk about this with not only Lathan Watts, but David Bonson and some others. So we're going to come back and get into some things that are encouraging as well, and maybe something you can participate in. But as we go to a break, here's a way you can participate. 800-347-5151. We'll be right back.
America was founded on a bedrock of biblical values. The best way to help America reclaim that godly heritage is to equip individuals to adopt a biblical worldview in their own life. You can help accomplish that by joining Point of View's Truth Team, and there is no better time to join than this week. The Truth Team is Point of View's core team of supporters, the people who make it possible for listeners like you around the nation to receive a biblical perspective on contemporary issues every day. To continue our mission effectively, Point of View needs to raise $150,000 by this Friday. Help us reach our goal and, most importantly, help Americans adopt a biblical worldview. Join the Truth Team today by visiting pointofview.net or call 1-800-347-5151. That's pointofview.net and toll free 1-800-347-5151. Point of View will continue after this. You are listening to Point of View. The opinions expressed on Point of View do not necessarily reflect the views of the management or staff of this station. And now, here again is Kerby Anderson.
Back once again in studio with me today, Collin Lambert as well as Lathan Watts. Going to get to a piece that you might want to find on our website, Woke Goes Up in Smoke by Andy Kessler. But before we get into some of those issues, I thought we'd see how we're doing with the match.
Yeah, we've got a $1,500 dollar-for-dollar match on the board. We've just got about 26 minutes remaining in the program today. $200 in on that so far, $1,300 remaining. What part might you be able to play play in that. 800-347-5151. It is Truth Team Week. We are listener supported. Everything you give goes to helping this ministry stay on the air, this program stay on the air, and all the resources, all the incredible guests like Lathan, who's in studio with us now, and one of the best hosts in America, Kerby Anderson. I can guarantee you, and he's been doing it for years, right here, faithfully serving you. If you appreciate the ministry that you get from Point of View, it's biblical to give back to a ministry that is giving to you. $150,000, our goal for the week. We need a big day every day, and this day is no different. $1,300 remaining. 800-347-5151. Dollar for dollar match. 800-347-5151 or pointofview.net.
Let's again talk about some of the other issues that ADF has been involved with. First of all, this piece from Andy Kessler reminds us that we do live in a little different world. It's called Woke Goes Up in Smoke. And part of that has to do with the fact that even on Inauguration Day, more than a year ago, Executive Order 14151 ended government diversity, equity, and inclusion programs. He goes on to talk a little bit about some of the environmental issues as well, even quoting from Bill Gates in his memo about tough truths about climate. So things are changing around, and that has been good. As I pointed out, he has a whole section here on how Hollywood and the media didn't get the memo, but corporate America seems to be, and certainly, Lathan, we can think about it in the broad sense, whether it's Bud Light or Target or a variety of other institutions, they recognize that going woke isn't very helpful. But for those that don't get the memo, you have developed a strategy that we've talked about with you and with David Bahnsen of saying, well, if they don't see the light, maybe they'll feel the heat. And the heat they'll feel is at the shareholders' meetings. Can you explain?
It can be, yeah. And because they have to have shareholder meetings and any shareholder can put forth a resolution for consideration by all the other shareholders to consider, a group of shareholders that we work with will sometimes propose a resolution on an issue like
ESG or DEI,
ESG, any of these things.
Yeah.
A lot of big companies have what they call employee resource groups, where you can form a group of, hey, we work for this company and we all like fly fishing, so let's get together, at lunch and talk about fly. And they've got all these different groups until somebody wants to form one around Christianity. And they're like, whoa, we can't do that. Or like employee gift match programs, where the company says you can choose a charity and we'll take part of your check to go to that charity and we'll match your donation, trying to be good corporate citizens or whatever. And then certain organizations are not matched. They don't qualify under the employee matching program. There's been some success on that specific issue just recently. BlackRock, of all places, changed their policy.
Very interesting.
But then you have, like, the flip side of that coin is like Starbucks, who still won't allow people to list ADF or other religious ministries as who their preferred charity for gift matching is. And it's because they use, Starbucks and lots of other companies use this contractor called Benevity, who sort of evaluates charities for these corporate gift matching programs. And Benevity relies on the Southern Poverty Law Center's hate map to define
hate groups,
to define discrimination.
So-called hate groups,
right. Mm-hmm. So, and I do have a piece coming out on this soon. I was hoping it was going to be out today, but
post it soon.
In that piece, I talk about relying on, Benevity relying on the SPLC. I mean, that's sort of like, an astrophysicist asking advice from somebody from the Flat Earth Society. This makes zero sense whatsoever. But a lot of times what happens is, like you mentioned, companies like Target and Bud Light who have learned the hard way. We're trying to help companies learn the easy way.
Yeah.
We're trying to meet, with the C-suites and talk about some of these issues and show them, here's the cautionary tales, right?
Right.
We can show you what the law is and how you could end up in court potentially, to say nothing of the fact that some of these policies that you're considering or have in place, you're alienating customers, you're alienating shareholders, you're alienating, probably a good portion of your workforce. And when it hits the news, consumers have a way of reacting, by not buying whatever it is you're selling, and then your stock price goes down, and your primary fiduciary duty is to your shareholders.
Yes.
So a lot of times what happens is, we'll reach out to a company like that, wanting to engage them, because we've heard certain things about certain policies, and sometimes they're receptive. Sometimes they sort of give us the Heisman, and then a shareholder resolution comes up. And then all of a sudden, they're more willing to talk to us because they don't want that resolution on the ballot, because a lot of shareholders don't know this is going on at the company. But if that shareholder resolution goes on the ballot, they're going to know what's going on. And, a lot of times then we get the meeting that says, okay, if you'll make adjustments to these policies, reverse course here, there, we'll withdraw the resolution. And it has been successful in a lot of places.
Collin, 2 decades ago, when I had a fit of insanity, I actually went to one of these shareholder meetings for ExxonMobil, which is in the Morton Meyerson, and sitting in front of me were the human rights group, basically the pro-homosexual group. And I was there for another reason and actually spoke, and then had people attack me, which happens all the time anyway. But, some of these shareholder meetings are like watching grass grow, but there is a difference because you get the attention of some of the CEOs and some of the senior management who don't necessarily think about their general public there. They're just being hounded by a few leftists, maybe in the corporate boardroom. And it's been a very effective strategy. And so we'll be talking with David Bahnsen again, and we've been talking about that with Lathan Watson. We just want to say, here's another way to make a difference in the community. And I'm sure you're probably hearing about that for the first time here on Point of View.
I was just going to say, there's another story that you're not hearing anywhere else, and you're hearing successes, which I think is beautiful as well, and understanding what's taking place behind the scenes. Again, you get a lot of headlines around the world in various news sources. You get headlines you don't see anywhere else here on Point of View, and you get in-depth conversation about it, not just the headline, but what's behind it, and of course the biblical implications of it as well. Truth Team Week this week. Are you a member of the Truth Team? That's really the basic question to ask. We've got a $1,500 dollar-for-dollar match on the board. Only 18 minutes remaining in this hour. We really need to hit that $1,500 dollar-for-dollar match in the next 18 minutes. Can you give $50 a month? Can you give $100 a month? Maybe entry level, kind of $30 a month? 800-347-5151, 800-347-5151, or you can go to pointofview.net.
Lathan, just before you go, one of the things you've said before, and that's why I want to have you back, is oftentimes when you cover some of these stories on even Fox News, they'll cover the story, but when you have the victory, they sort of don't even mention it. We've always tried to bring you back, and when this decision, a couple of decisions now come down from the Supreme Court, or when your next article posts, we will have you back to talk about those.
Yes, sir, and we appreciate it. We've got 4 cases at the Supreme Court right now, waiting on decisions. We're end of March. The term goes through June, so here in the next 2-3 months, we could have 4 cases to come back and talk about. 2 women's sports cases, the first choice case we talked about, and Kaylee Childs versus Salazar, the counseling censorship law in Colorado. And, our legislative team is busy right now because the state legislatures are in session, not here in Texas where we're sitting, but in lots of other places. We got a lot of successes to talk about there, too.
So, again, that's just another thing we do. We tell you the rest of the story, which we need to hear.
As Paul Harvey used to say.
That's right.
800-347-5151, 800-347-5151. Can you help us knock out this final $1,300 of the $1,500 dollar-for-dollar match? Gifts of any amount right now, doubled up to $1,300. 800-347-5151 or pointofview.net.
Well, Lathan, as always, great to have you here. You've got an invitation back as soon as one of those 4 or many of those cases come down. They may put 2 of those together. We'll see what it is. But don't ask us to beg, but if nothing else, we like to end at the top of the hour by reaching that particular match. So again, that number is 800 1-800-347-5151. You're not missing anything right now by making that phone call. Of course, you can always go to the website, pointofview.net. 1-800-347-5151. We'll give you an update right after this.
Restoring America's Godly Heritage. Point of View.
We often take for granted the fact that we have good voices and information coming from ministries like Point of View. But I know, having traveled around the world, when I want to get good news about what's happening in our country or what's happening around the world, that news is just simply not there. Or if it's there, it's coming from a very slanted, very radical, left-leaning, anti-Judeo-Christian perspective. News that you really can't trust. So I think it's critically important that we support Point of View, because it is doing a tremendous ministry here in this country. And if we don't support it, that ministry will ultimately lose its voice. That would be a critical absence that would clearly affect our Christian communities. It's absolutely critical that we support Point of View.
Point of View. Restoring America's Godly Heritage.
Encouragement from Matthew Staver of Liberty Counsel, just another group that has been standing up for religious liberty for many years. And I might just mention that we are going to be getting into a variety of different topics tomorrow. But as we are coming to the end of our second day, still have a match on the table. Let me mention one of the articles I've posted for you. Democrats are on a taxing binge. Don't take my word for it. It comes from the Wall Street Journal. And just as I pointed out earlier, we couldn't cut anything from a budget. If you look at tax revenue across 50 states, it's increased 43%, which is twice the rate of inflation. And a lot of that comes from certain states. And I'll just mention those. If you want to see what's happened in California, where the Service Employees International Union wants to actually impose a 5% wealth tax. Washington wants to do the same, even though it actually has a state constitution bans a graduated income tax. But nevertheless, it seems to be chasing out Howard Schultz of Starbucks and Jeff Bezos of Amazon, going, of course, to our friends in New York and Albany, New York, not to mention, of course, the New York Mayor Zohran Mamdani. He also mentions Rhode Island and Virginia and Maryland, and even at the national level, wanting to raise taxes. We'll be getting into that tomorrow because we have our good friend Gary Bauer with us. As well, a little bit later, Joshua Barnes will be with us. We'll talk about some of the things happening in the Middle East. And in that whole first hour, we'll have Liberty with us. And Liberty's become kind of the expert here on artificial intelligence. What's that going to do to your job? What's that going to do to your community? What about this supersonic tsunami that Elon Musk talked about? So there are some really important things that you won't want to miss tomorrow. But right now, I don't want to miss that match, and it's still on the table.
It is. We've got a $1,500 dollar-for-dollar match on the board. You can call right now and get your gift doubled. Here's some gifts that have just come in the last few minutes. Kathleen in Georgia, thank you for your gift. Jeffrey in Indiana with a monthly gift. Mary in South Carolina with a gift. And Judy in Arkansas with a $50 a month gift. We're grateful for each and every one of those. We only have 9 minutes left in today's broadcast, and we want to see if we can hit that goal by the top of the hour. So anything you can do right now would be incredibly grateful. I want to share something we learned from Mark, who's been a listener for 37 years. This is one of our longtime listeners. Mark from Illinois said that he would listen to Point of View at his desk, and he couldn't use a speaker because other people in the office couldn't be exposed to it, so he used an earpiece. But one of the things that happened with Mark was he would hear you say something, and he would exclaim about it out loud, like, I can't believe that's happening. Yeah. And he said a coworker came to him and said, what are you listening to? This is what Mark said from Illinois. He said, I was able to tell them about the show and the truth of what's happening in our country, opening a door to not only share the program, but my faith as well. One young lady came to me after listening to Point of View. She told me she had recommitted her life to Christ and her prayer life because of the conviction and compassion for others that she felt after listening to the program and what you were teaching through that program. I mean, that's the kind of impact. Who would have even known? Mark's listening to it in his earpiece, and yet he's exclaiming out loud, I can't believe that's happening. And the young lady hears him say it, asks what he's listening to. She listens and recommits her life to Christ. It's a powerful ministry. It has been for 54 years, and your gift enables us to be able to continue. These gifts we're asking for, the $150,000 for the week, are not bonus dollars. These are not extra dollars. These keep this program on the air where you are in one of these 40 states. 800-347-5151. 800-347-5151. Get your gift doubled right now. $1,500 dollar-for-dollar match on the board, pointofview.net.
You know, one of the things we also see here is one of the individuals is talking about how he became interested in apologetics and actually got together a group where they would discuss some of that. And in the past, of course, we've talked about people that have run for school board or city council, legislature, Congress, even for the presidency, and others that have actually gotten involved with pregnancy resource centers, maybe even started one or started a Christian school or decided to homeschool their kids. But one of the things I thought was very interesting here is because one of the issues that I really try to bring to the table so often is the need for us to know how to defend our faith. And even next week, we're going to be talking about archaeology. As a matter of fact, we have 2 different books coming out on archaeology by 2 very gifted individuals. And also we talk about the reliability of the Bible and all sorts of other issues. So that is another aspect of what we do. Oftentimes people think about point of view being political, and it certainly gets into the political issues, but also talks about the economic issues, talks about theological issues, apologetics, and much, much more. So when you support this ministry, not only are we helping equip you to make a difference, you're helping other people get interested and wanting to maybe make a difference in their community and empowering them and educating them to make a difference, to be salt and light. So again, your gift as we come to the end of the program today is going to be essential just to meet the match, right?
We just have 6 minutes remaining. 6 minutes remaining. A dollar-for-dollar match on the board. 800-347-5151. Maybe you can help out. 800-347-5151. Pointofview.net. Let me encourage you to be a part. It's a big goal for the week, but it's something that is critical for this ministry to continue. If you love what Kerby does, if you love the information they provide for you, if you are excited about the program each day and tuning in and it's feeding you, you really ought to be giving back. And if you know, I've always said, Kerby, if maybe 1 or 2% of the listeners who listen to this program would give for the very first time, you'd be through with it. We'd be through by tomorrow.
That's right.
And we could just take Thursday and Friday off. Whatever you want to do, though, the key is giving, and giving joyfully to the Lord through this ministry. God is using you to continue his work in a dark and sinful world. Your gift can make a difference for eternity. 800-347-5151. 800-347-5151. Pointofview.net. And a quick reminder, this was the last match we had in the bag, if you will. And so any other gifts, large gifts, if you want to give a gift of $2,500 or $5,000 or maybe a $10,000, I believe we're going to need some of those this week, Kerby. You can give those at that same phone number or at pointofview.net. We'll get back with you and make sure that your gift is used just as you like.
Just as we're going off the air, we'll still take those phone calls, 800-347-5151. If you're listening to this later in the day, I think we still will have people manning those phone calls. And, of course, 24/7, you can go to pointofview.net. Looking forward to our time with Liberty as well as Gary Bauer and Joshua Barnes tomorrow. But certainly just before we end today, 800-347-5151. Pointofview.net is the website.
We've just got $70 left in the match. $70 in a few seconds. Call right now. We'll count you if you get in on the line.
We do want to thank Megan for help engineering the program, pulling all those clips, as well as Steve for producing the program. Enjoy this Tuesday. I hope you'll join us tomorrow as we get into some very important issues. But most importantly, give us a call, 800-347-5151. We look forward to seeing you tomorrow right here on Point of View.
America's founding fathers knew that freedom requires morality. It was John Adams who said, Our Constitution was made only for a moral and religious people. It is wholly inadequate to the government of any other. If we want to preserve the freedom in America, we must equip Americans with a biblical worldview once more. For over 50 years, Point of View has done just that by applying a biblical perspective to every issue of the day, thanks to our ministry partners, people like you. And that is why I'm asking you to join the Truth Team. And the time to join is right now, because Point of View needs to raise $150,000 this week. Help America reclaim its moral compass. Join the Truth Team today by visiting pointofview.net or call 1-800-347-5151. That's pointofview.net and 1-800-347-5151. Point of View is produced by Point of View Ministries.